The 1 gigabyte block wall. Celestia is currently stress testing 1 gigabyte blocks on its path to the Mammoth upgrade, a data volume that would functionally paralyze a standard monolithic blockchain. While most networks optimize for transaction execution speed, this architecture focuses entirely on the raw physics of data propagation and availability. Moving 1 gigabyte of data every 12 seconds requires a throughput of roughly 83 megabytes per second, nearly 4 times the speed of a typical residential high-speed connection. This shift transforms the protocol from a traditional ledger into a verifiable backplane for what the core team calls everything markets. The central engineering challenge is no longer how many smart contracts the network can run, but whether the peer-to-peer layer can distribute this volume without collapsing into a centralized data center. This architectural gamble hinges on the efficiency of data availability sampling. The physics of sampling efficiency. Data availability sampling, or DAS, is the only reason a 1 gigabyte block is technically feasible for decentralized nodes. Under the hood, Celestia uses two-dimensional Reed-Solomon encoding to shard block data into a massive matrix of shares. This mathematical trick ensures that a light node only needs to sample a tiny fraction of the block to have nearly 100% certainty that the entire dataset is available. Crucially, as the block size scales from the current 128 megabyte matcha standard toward 1 gigabyte, the number of samples a light client must perform remains remarkably stable. However, the trade-off is the reconstruction cost. If a malicious producer hides small portions of the data, the network relies on a sufficiently high number of light nodes collectively sampling the matrix to force the full block into the light. The bottleneck is no longer the individual node, but the total bandwidth of the sampling network. Vacuum and Fibre. The propagation plumbing. You cannot move gigabytes of data using standard gossip protocols, which is why the 2026 roadmap introduced the Vacuum and Fibre protocols. Vacuum replaces the noisy, redundant data shouting of early blockchains with a content-addressable mempool that optimizes how blobs move between validators. Meanwhile, the Fibre upgrade is designed to sustain massive data flows by treating the network like a verifiable server rather than a shared database. In recent performance benchmarks, the protocol demonstrated that it could handle significant spikes in blob demand while maintaining a cost structure roughly 55 times cheaper than Ethereum blobs. This engineering choice assumes that the future of scaling is not in making better virtual machines, but in providing the cheapest possible raw data for external execution layers like the Solana virtual machine or the OP stack. The limit is now physical, the latency of light traveling through fiber optic cables between global validators, the signal under the noise. The transition to 1 gigabyte blocks confirms that the modular roadmap has moved from a theoretical debate to an industrial engineering race. By prioritizing the Mammoth upgrade and the Fibre protocol, the network is decoupling the value of the chain from execution entirely, betting that data abundance will commoditize the settlement and execution layers. This matters for developers because it shifts the economic constraint from high gas fees to the raw cost of data storage and verification. If these upgrades sustain their target throughput, we are moving toward a regime where a blockchain acts as a verifiable server for high-frequency applications like agentic payments and on-chain ad auctions. The core implication is that the bottleneck for rollups has shifted from Ethereum's data wall to the physical limits of the global internet backbone itself. Watch the data reconstruction times on the Mammoth testnets as the primary indicator of whether this scale can maintain decentralization without forcing all nodes into high-end data centers. Subscribe for more